Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. And it's a Wednesday, which means we've got some serious business to attend to. But we can't get started until we can make sure the tubes are working, and it looks like they are. That's tremendous. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about thievery. That is the subject of the show today. Of course, the debt crisis catastrophe is coming down the pike in full view of all of America. They're going to be voting on this thing tonight. And from what we have gathered, it looks like it is going to pass. Oh, great. So we'll get updates on what's happening from the New York Times. We'll also see what Marjorie-Taylor Greene has to say for us. She put out a Twitter thread herself. And you remember that yesterday we had the very nice Twitter thread from Nancy Mace, another representative. This is a little bit of a response. 19 tweets that we'll go through from Marjorie. We also had an update from Steve Scalise and Kev McCarthy himself out in the House of Representatives, very excited about this new deal, talking about it like it's a major victory. If it passes today, as many suspect it will then go on over to the Senate. Rand Paul has some comments on this bill. We'll listen to him. He's very upset about it, rightfully so. But Chuck Schumer says they are going to usher this thing through. They're going to get it done, and so we'll expect to see more from the Senate. But that will be an update. Bunch of clips on this. They're all talking about all of that. Then some pretty interesting stories today over from the FBI purview. We have to get into this. We know that yesterday they failed, the FBI, failed to give over that FD 1023 form over to Congress. Congress wanted that form. FBI said, you can't have it. Representative James Comer had a phone call with FBI Director Wray today. We're going to get caught up to speed on what happened during that phone call. And apparently they are moving forward with contempt. So the FBI today confirmed that they do in fact have that form. The FD 1023 does exist. And we'll see what they're going to do. But they said that Congress cannot actually see the form. They can only, not have the form. They can only see the form. So we'll unpack all of that. You remember Comey, he's out there talking about this stuff as well. And so we'll check in and see what he had to say. We've got a couple of clips, one from Matt Gaetz, another one from Representative Rick Perry. And they're talking about contempt and they're talking about jail, throwing Christopher Wray in the House Brig. And this is a shot from inside the basement. That is not actually the Brig, but it is a shot within the basement. So we'll talk about that. And then there was some other big news today that we will touch on. James O'Keefe being sued by Project Veritas. What an absolute joke and a scam this is. So, of course, we know James O'Keefe left Project Veritas in very tumultuous conditions and started his own organization called OMG, the O'Keefe Media Group. Well, they got sued by Project Veritas today. Absolute total scam. And so we'll see what this says. They don't want O'Keefe to talk. And I have been thinking that this is a big attack on conservative commentators for a long time. Remember that back in the 2020 election, we knew that there was the different groups, labor groups were colluding with each other. They created this cabal, they said. They wrote an article about it, saying that they worked as like a rapid response team to Trump. And they concocted all these different plans to respond to this and respond to that. I would imagine something similar like that is happening here with the conservative commentators, people like Tucker, people like James O'Keefe. Other people are in the crosshairs, no doubt about it, and more will come. But they're using lawfare to take them out. They use lawfare with the Dominion lawsuit to go after Tucker and Fox. They're doing the same thing here with O'Keefe. So it's absolutely time to rally the troops and to support other conservative commentators out there because they are coming for them all and they want to take them out because they know it's effective. This is part of an operation, I would imagine. We'll see. Now, we also have a fun clip from our friend Amuse. Great follow on Twitter at Amuse. Always recommend. And then James O'Keefe is going to be on with Tim Pool later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be after this show is over, so you can go and follow along there. After the show's over, after it's over. But my friends, as you can see, we have a lot to get to. And if you want to be a part of the show, the best way to do that is by joining our amazing community, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an awesome chat there that is working away. Clean Up Your Act, John Allen, JC the Music Man, and C. Reed also chatting away over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And if you want to join us, we'd love to have you. And if you're a YouTube member, don't forget you can, if you become a member anywhere on Locals or on YouTube, get access to our private Telegram group via the Telegram link. Now, since we are going to have to ingest this disgusting, rotten debt deal, right now McCarthy and the rest of the bureaucrats are cooking something up in the oven, and it's disgusting, and they're going to make us all eat it. There's nothing we can do about it right now, except take our field of greens and make sure we're properly balanced and fortified and nutrified with real organic superfood, because we all would like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, wouldn't we? You know, but how sick are you of all those ads for weight loss pills and fad diets and all those things? We've all been there. We've all done that. They just don't work, you know? But what does? 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, fruit and vegetables, not a fan. Takes a lot of time to prepare that every day. They go bad in like a day. It's just a big pain in the butt. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula. Very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you'll look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof comes at your next checkup when your doctor says, "Whoa, what the heck are you doing? Whatever it is, keep it up." They're not going to know. It's fieldofgreens.com. You can tell them. Maybe your doctor will like some. Make sure he uses code Robert too. So let's get you started. 15% over at fieldofgreens.com. You can save that by using code Robert when you check out. Very delicious, very nutritious. And remember, the vegetables want to be eaten. And Chris, it's not that at all. Chris, it's very good. It's very good. It's delicious. I see Chris Crispy in the chat. It's delicious. Yeah, it's very good. So try it out. All right. And so that, my friends, is where you can get your Field of Greens. Now, let's get into the program on the day. Congress gearing up to jam another debt deal down our gullets. And they're trying to sell it like this is a good thing for America. Like we're all better off because these bureaucrats continue to spend money that the country doesn't have. But as Congress gets together to pass this thing at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, we're going to look at updates and we're going to see why some very familiar faces have decided to flip and support what feels like to us endless spending with very limited conditions on where that money goes. We're going to hear from Marjorie, Steve Scalise, Kevin McCarthy. They're all on board with this. Rand Paul is not. He's in the Senate. We'll see what they say as well. But first, where are we at? What is the update? Get a status check for us here. Updated 15 minutes ago. House votes to consider spending the federal debt limit. That's going to be happening tonight. You see McCarthy and the crew waltzing into the House. The House voted on Wednesday to take up, coming out of the Rules Committee, that would suspend the nation's debt and limit spending, clearing a major procedural hurdle. Republicans are in revolt over the measure. It fell to Democrats to help clear the way for legislation in a 241 to 187 vote that reflected a bitter split over the compromise. The vote to begin debate is normally a formality that passes entirely along party lines. Mr. McCarthy's inability to keep his members united was a political setback. So it led to a suspenseful scene on the House floor. Republican defections stacked up. Democrats waited to begin casting votes. In the end, 29 Republicans opposed the measure. 52 Democrats crossed party lines to support it. Now, that's just to open debate. To muster a 218 vote majority to push the actual bill through the closely divided House, McCarthy will need to cobble together a coalition of Republicans willing to back it and enough Democrats to make up for what was shaping to be a substantial number of GOP defections. Mr. McCarthy and his lieutenants predicted they would be able to do so, and they scheduled a final vote for Wednesday night. That's tonight. Everybody has a right to their own opinion, he said, but on history, I'd want to be here with this bill today. We'll go through it. Now, the vote came after a contentious debate on the House floor. Both Democrats and Republicans are frustrated with this. In that compromise, they say nobody got what they wanted. We certainly didn't get everything we wanted. I'm pretty sure the Democrats got a lot more than the Republicans got, but we'll get there. Republican chairman of the Rules Committee later said, we'll continue to try to work together, but the preeminent problem we have with our friends on the other side think we can spend forever. Right. And the Republicans just kind of let them. Their biggest accomplishment will be ending a crisis, and they're all pointing fingers at each other. But we have questions about certain congresspeople who tell us they're very conservative, but then suddenly they come out and they walk us through what a great deal this bill is. Here's a group of people we normally appreciate here on this show. People like Jim Jordan, Tom Massey, and Marjorie-Taylor Greene, all siding with this debt deal. And, you know, there's room for disagreements on all of these issues. And you can have congresspeople who do great work on other issues and do crap work on debt issues. And they are allowed to be criticized for those various issues and supported on the other issues where they're doing great work. This is a bad issue for these three. In my humble opinion, other Republicans think it's great. But they continue to spend, and based on what we read yesterday from Nancy Mace's interpretation on this, from Senator Mike Lee's interpretation on this, from many others, this is, including the Freedom Caucus in the House, which we followed a lot yesterday, Byron Donalds, Representative Dan Bishop, and others, they're telling us that their interpretation of this bill is that it is a big, meaningless nothing burger. And so it's very interesting to see these individuals come out and try to sell it to us.
About the meeting in there and what the general overall theme was, Congressman Green, you obviously said you weren't for sure a yes. Have you made up your mind yet?
Yeah, I came into town undecided, and after asking a lot of questions and talking with everyone, for me, there's a couple of very important things in this bill.
Like what?
Number one, it's the CR plan that thankfully Congressman Massey came up with.
Yeah.
And I've said from day one, this Congress, that the appropriations is where the fight is. And this plan allows us to pass 12 separate appropriation bills, and that's really important to me because I believe we have to fight. We have to fight to stop the weaponized government. We have to fight to reduce spending. We have to fight.
That's what your job was right now, was to fight to reduce spending. Like, that's the whole point of this whole deal that we're working on today. And as we learned yesterday, this deal kicks this can down the road until after 2024, after the election. It doesn't become another issue again until January. So this is the fight, okay? There is not going to be another opportunity for this in the Biden administration's term. So all this talk is crap. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to fight, and so on. Now, she's going to say, well, it's in the Appropriations Committee. That's where we do the hard work. And we read yesterday that there are waivers and exceptions written throughout this deal so that even Shalanda, who is from the Office of the Budget at the White House, Shalanda came out yesterday and confirmed that if any of these provisions interfere with the Biden administration's agenda, they're just going to waive them and do it anyways. So all of this stuff is just neat talk. They're going to move it from the top line to appropriations or whatever. But if they failed on this set of negotiations, should we believe that they have any fortitude in any of the future negotiations about appropriations? They're negotiating with the same Democrats who steamrolled them on this case.
And figure out a way to stop the 87,000 IRS agents.
That was supposed to happen now. By the time you figure it out, it's going to be done.
That are going to target conservatives. We have to figure out a way to use the Holman rule to get rid of people that are abusing their power and welding corruption and weaponized government against conservatives. So I believe in that plan, and we don't have a way to do it except in this bill right here. And so I'm really thankful to Congressman Massey for that. And for me, that's an anchor piece. Secondly, we cut $2.1 trillion in spending. That is absolutely amazing. Nowhere have we been able to do that this far, especially when we control this Congress with just a handful of seats, and this is one part. So I think it's really important to get behind it. It's going to be a fight. I think we need to get it passed, but I will say I'm not going to stand to the side and allow Chuck Schumer to send a clean debt ceiling bill back over here to the House with Lindsey Graham attaching Ukraine spending on it. And that's something that is important to me as well.
So it's about Ukraine. All right. So look, to be fair, I think that all of these people are good Congress people and they're doing good work on other issues. This is a catastrophe of an issue, and they have dropped the ball on this pretty bad. You can see in Marjorie-Taylor Greene's face. I'm not sure she's really happy about this either, but they're good soldiers. They just go out there and they do what the home team wants to do. We're on Team Republican. Republicans got to get this done. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences for us or for the GOP or whatever. So they go out and they deliver the talking points just like you would if you were on a football team, right? Or just like you would if you were on any sports team. Yeah, you know, our coach made a crap play on that, or my quarterback did something stupid. We're not real happy with this play, or we're not happy with that decision to do this over here. Our company kind of boned that up, but we got to go out and fight for our company. We got to go out and stand up and, you know, cram this through. So they are good soldiers. They're doing what McCarthy wants, and the rest of us have to suffer the consequence. Now, I get irritated when they try to take a crap deal and try to tell us that it's an amazing deal, when every morning we wake up and there's more spending. There's another, I think, $300 million going over to Ukraine today. We've got all sorts of problems in this country, and they are spending. And every time they spend more, it impacts all of our dollars. There isn't that money. They're making it up, which makes the value of our dollars less. Marjorie-Taylor Greene gave us some more background on this. She said, I agree with my conservative friends in the Freedom Caucus, who we talked about yesterday, on some of the flaws in this act. And I've never wanted to raise the debt ceiling on debt that I never voted to create. Here she is explaining this one. But I came to Washington to make changes. And this bill actually provides a tool that gives us a chance to make those fiscal changes, the one that came from Massey. The only power Republicans currently have is barely 1/2 of Congress. Okay. Which is only 1/3 of the federal government. Democrats control the rest. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So if the country defaults, or if the Democrats don't cooperate, isn't it on them? I've been saying all along that the fight that I will fully engage in is appropriations, because appropriations is where everything is funded or defunded. And when your only real power is the ability to fund or defund, I'm all in to use that power as much as possible. In this debt ceiling bill, Marjorie says, there is a tool provided to us that requires the House to pass 12 separate appropriations bills from the 12 different appropriations subcommittees. And if we can't get them passed, then we automatically pass a funding continuing resolution with an automatic 1% cut. Okay. So is there times when Congress can't get stuff spent? So you're telling me that this only happens, we only get an automatic 1% cut if they can't spend money. So my guess is they're going to spend the money, right? That's obviously going to happen. Here's how it works. Marjorie says, in the past, the 12 appropriations bills would get put together in bill packages, anywhere from 3s to 6s, all the way to one big vote for all 12. That was done so leadership could force everyone to vote for all 12 funding appropriations, even if they didn't agree on several of the appropriation bills. It's all or nothing. Conservatives hated this because they couldn't vote no on bad bills and vote yes on the good ones. They could only vote yes or no to all of them. Wow, okay. And add on top of this the pressure of a government shutdown if they didn't get appropriations done by the end of the year. We have all watched this dramatic saga on the news where Congress is in session on Christmas Eve being pressured to vote to fund the government. Yeah, on Christmas Eve or like Memorial Day, the one that we just had, to pass appropriations bill, or they couldn't be home to watch little Johnny open his presents on Christmas morning. And senior citizens wouldn't get their Social Security checks. So they held their nose and pressed the green button, and here we are. Marjorie says, by the way, dirty little tricks like these in the swamp are a big reason why we are nearing $32 trillion in debt and facing this ridiculous debt ceiling issue to begin with. Right. That you guys are agreeing to fund with another $4 trillion, maybe. But with the Massey CR tool in this bill, the only tool that, according to Marjorie by her own statement, only gets invoked if they can't spend, which I guarantee you they will. They're obviously going to spend. It's like, hey, you have to spend $10,000 or you lose a little bit of money. You're going to spend the $10,000 on anything. On top of that, this is pressure of a government, the pressure of a government shutdown. She says, but with the Massey CR tool in this bill that will get signed into law, the 12 appropriation bills will be separate, so we get to look at them differently. It's not all or nothing. And if we don't get them passed because conservatives like me refuse to vote for garbage, yeah, right, then we don't have to deal with the pressure cooker campaign of a government shutdown because an automatic funding continuing resolution gets passed and the government gets funded 99% with a 1% spending cut for the American people. So I think she's saying that she can hold all of this up. And we'll see if she does that, right? So all of it would take would be separate appropriations bills. And if these people on the appropriations committee don't vote for the bills and they can't get them passed, then there is an automatic 1% cut that comes in, which would be great. I'd love to see the cut. My guess is, though, that never happens, that we never get this 1% cut. I would guess it never comes. That remains in place until we accomplish the hard work of passing 12 good separate appropriations bills, which they will. And that's where the real negotiation is going to take place. Just so all of us dummies out in the society can really understand what happened here. The actual negotiation that we've all been watching with close eyes over the last several weeks, or days really, with the Biden administration and McCarthy, that's not really consequential. What they write down into the bill, what they pass into law, all of those things, the hard written, coded law in the statute is not really that important. What is important is the Appropriations Committee. That's where the real negotiation happens. For me, along with other strong conservatives like Jim Jordan, Warren Davidson, and Thomas Massie, and many others, we see this as an opportunity to make real changes when we are fighting with practically both hands tied behind our backs. And with the very reality of Chuck Schumer passing a clean debt ceiling raise in the Senate with another Ukraine supplemental attached, passing the Fiscal Responsibility Act now gives us a new appropriations tool and cuts $2.1 trillion from the spending. We understand the urgency to pass this bill. If you're still having trouble understanding, just use your imagination and focus more on what we can defund in appropriations, Marjorie's telling us. I'm not that creative, though. I can't imagine anything. Okay, so just use your imagination. What could it be? There's a lot of issues in this country. Could we defund the FBI? Could we defund the DOJ? Could we defund the EPA? Could we defund DHS? That's what my imagination goes to. Do you think anything of that is going to happen at all in any one of these committees? Of course not. So we should be living in fantasy land and how we can all apply the Holman rule, which allows us not to fund federal programs and employees. And I have to inform you, these tools are being given to our entire conference by Speaker McCarthy. And I completely understand the skepticism because I had it too, but things are different. Use your imagination. I ran for Congress because I felt like the Republican Party was broken. But in the past 5 months, our Republican conference that barely has 218 votes to do anything, this is the third time that she's complaining about the size of the Republican Party. Passed the strongest border security bill in history, America First energy bill, Parents' Bill of Rights, Protecting Speech and Women, Girls in Sports Act, and many other truly conservative bills. That's great that you passed them. Are they going anywhere in the Senate? No. Why? Because you don't control the Senate. What do you control? The House. What does the House have? The power of the purse. When do you use the power of the purse? In negotiations over the debt, where we're talking about financial collapse of the country. So this is all just red herrings. I mean, it really is neat that they got all this crap passed, but has any of it been signed into law? No, none of it. So when they can get stuff that is totally meaningless done and the Democrats don't care because they know it's not going anywhere. But when it's time to play about a topic that matters, which is about the debt and about the debt ceiling, where the Republicans actually can do something where they can't on any of these other things, protecting women's and girls in sports, protecting speech, all that crap, it goes to the Senate and dies. This is where they could have drawn a line in the sand. This is where all the conservative bona fides could have come out. This is where we could have stopped spending like lunatics after the COVID era and returned to some sense of normalcy. But they're not doing any of that. Instead, Marjorie's truly excited at the thought of what we can accomplish if Americans give us full control with the White House, House, and the Senate. Yeah. We'll give you more control. Sure. We're all enthusiastic about what you've done to us. I know what every hardworking American knows. Rome was not built in a day and problems don't get solved overnight. It takes tenacious hard work and commitment to never give up. Commitment is an important word, and never giving up is another important concept. When you go into Congress and you talk about things like fiscal responsibility and getting America's house back in order, many Republicans, in my opinion, have given up. This is a game of inches, and I intend for all of us to win, says Marjorie. That is 19 of 19. And so that is where she stands. Thomas Massey's on that same team, as is Steve Scalise. And so here is how the Republicans came out and tried to sell this one to us.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Appreciate your work. Look, there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of late nights that have gone into changing the spending trajectory in this town that has brought us to this point where we've got over $31 trillion in debt.
It's going to be 34.
Tonight is no different. You see how late it is?
Or 35.
The work's not going to stop for a long time. There's a lot of work that needs to continue to go into fixing all of the problems that President Biden has created.
Yeah, use your imagination.
You see inflation through the roof. You see the struggles that hardworking families are experiencing because Washington went on a multi-trillion-dollar spending binge over the last 2 years.
Right.
And Joe Biden didn't want that spending binge to end. But the American people had a different idea when they elected a House Republican majority committed to finally getting spending under control in Washington.
We did have a different idea.
And that's what this bill is about.
Yeah, we did have a different idea.
You know, something you haven't seen in a long time in this town.
What is it?
Is that when a major bill comes to the floor, we actually give our members time to read the bill before you vote on it.
This is another dumb talking point they've all been using. McCarthy came out with this one too. We'll hear it in a minute. It's very, very tired. They say, well, we at least read the bills. And it's like, okay, that's great. You took 3 days to read a crap bill. To be honest, I don't care if you have a crap bill that you pass and don't read it, or if you have a crap bill and you read it and pass it, it's still a crap bill. The point of having the 3-day window was so that the American people could also read it and speak out and put pressure on you people to stop doing stuff that we don't want you to do. They come out and they tell us that they got elected because Americans want a new era. They want a whole new different approach to all of this stuff. And they do the exact same stuff.
We have a 72-hour minimum that we allow every member to read the bill. And the more that people read in this bill, the more they find in terms of real conservative victories that are going to help us get spending under control and get our economy back on track. And you have to do both. You will never get to a balanced budget unless you do two major things. One is control Washington's spending obsession, but also you've got to help get people back to work. You've got to help get the economy moving again. And there are a number of pieces in this bill that never would have existed if Nancy Pelosi was still Speaker of the House. Everybody knows that if we were at this point today and Republicans were in the minority in the House, all that you would be wondering about is how much more spending was Washington going to do over current year?
We don't even know what the upper limit is. My understanding is there is no upper cap. They can spend whatever they want. Nancy Pelosi might have put a number on it, for crying out loud.
How many more taxes are hardworking families going to have to pay?
A lot.
Because
of this. If there is no money coming into the government and you keep spending, you're going to have to close that gap. There is going to be a massive increase of taxes in this country if they get their way. It's the only way to close the gap. They're going to bring out student loans is coming back on, and that's going to take out major chunks of cash from the country. Commercial real estate's on the brink. We see a whole world where things are on the brink of a recession. So the tax revenues are going to go down, and they're not going to be able to pay for this additional spending. They sell it to us as a cut, but there is an increase.
Guess what? Joe Biden wanted more taxes in this package, and Speaker McCarthy insisted not a dime in new taxes would be in this bill or any other bill that comes out of this House majority. And that's made crystal clear in this legislation. We restart the student loan paybacks. That's a $60 billion windfall for all of those families who actually do pay their bills. For those families,
how is that a windfall for them?
That didn't go to college, or especially.
Are they getting money back when other people pay their student loans? Are they getting money back for that? And I talked about this yesterday, and I said that this is an unforced error from the Republicans. This was a Democrat issue that they were going to have to deal with at some point. They already said that they were going to bring back the student loans in. Now the Republicans are accelerating that, taking full ownership of this issue for some stupid reason. And it's going to be used, already is being utilized by the left to say the Republicans are starting your loans up again. So when they get the letters, they're going to go to Miguel Cardona and he's going to say the Republicans accelerated this. I can't believe they've done this. And they're taking this and telling their base that this is a victory for their base, which is true, right? That people should pay their bills. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the Democrats had this issue. They had to own it. They kept continuing it and postponing it and postponing it. And now the Republicans, like idiots, took that issue away from them and said, we'll be the bad guys now. It is so dumb. And then they come out and they tell us this is a giant victory. Why? Because they're going to be paying their loans again? But you guys are spending even more. Joe Biden sending another $300 million over to Ukraine. So yes, we want a return to normalcy, but we want it done responsibly. And it's just a political blunder for the Republicans to take this issue, which was a Democrat faceplant, away from them.
For those families who went to college and took out student loans and paid them back.
Right.
And think it's fair.
Is that a windfall, though?
That everyone else has to do the same thing they did. And it wouldn't be fair if some hardworking single mom working 2 jobs right now has to pay so that somebody who took out a student loan and is sitting at his parents' house right now, making $35,000 a year, not working.
The hell are you talking about?
She has to pay his loan back.
What are you talking about? That's not how that works.
That wouldn't be fair. And you know what else we do? We put work requirements in place. Something we haven't seen in a long time. Something, by the way, that was an originated idea back when Joe Biden was a senator and he voted for it, when Bill Clinton was president, working with a Republican majority. Something that helped get people out of poverty and back into the workforce. Paying into programs like Social Security that are going bankrupt under Joe Biden's spending binge, but because people will be working again. That is going to help us shore up Social Security. So this bill does all of those things.
I don't know what he's talking about. Some woman who's working 2 jobs is paying her loan. Some other dude is hanging out for $35,000 a year working at his mom's house, or not working at his mom's house. And this is going to right that wrong. And if we right that wrong, then he's going to get back to work. And then that's going to fix Social Security on top of it.
And more. Real spending cuts, real reforms, permitting reforms that allow us to build roads and bridges again.
Wow. Permits.
Why should it take 10 years to build a road project where sometimes if
it shouldn't.
Group
that this is a spending bill
that just wants to kill a project, you can go through all the environmental reviews and there might be 5 different agencies that are looking at your permit, and as soon as they file lawsuits and block one area, you succeed a year and a half later, and they go file another lawsuit, and it's another year and a half. And finally, eventually, people just give up, and they stop building things in America. Well, we create a one-stop shop in this bill so that you still have to follow all the rules, but it's not gamed. You can't go from agency to agency to try to stop a project. You only go to one place, and there's shot clocks on the federal agencies. Anybody who's ever tried to build something in America, if a federal agency asks you for information, they don't just say whenever you get around to doing it, send us the information. They give you a shot clock. And if you don't meet that deadline, you're going to get fined, or you're surely not going to get your permit.
It sounds like he's just talking to try to beat the shot clock from expiring on this press conference. He's just rambling off. Social Security. We got to get that fixed. And if we don't fix Social Security, then there's going to be people on student loans who just hanging out in their mom's basement. And by the way, have you seen what it takes to build a basement lately? I mean, if a federal agency kind of came into your basement and they said, put a beam in here, you'd have to go and get 5 permits in 30 different agencies. And it's totally ridiculous, which is why this bill is so important. And we need to pass it immediately to save America.
And yet you give them that information, and you might wait 6 months or a year longer to hear back from the federal agency. Shouldn't the federal agency have the same shot clock that you, the taxpayer, have? We put that in this bill, too. So, again, there are a lot of really important reforms that are in this package, something that I think everybody has been waiting a long time to see from Washington.
No,
Not how much more is Washington going to spend, but for once in a long, long time, Washington is actually going to spend less money next year than it is this year. And that's a reform that all of us can support.
Does anybody believe that for a second? Next year, they're going to spend less?
All right, with that, why don't we take...
Next year, Washington's going to spend less. I think I caught a facial reaction. Let's take a look at these reactions. Let's take a look at her reaction here. When he says Washington's going to spend less, let's
Washington. See. Not how much more is Washington going to spend, but for once in a long, long time, Washington is actually going to spend less money next year than it is this year. And that's a reform.
I'm not sure. I think it was right there. She says, yeah, right there. Eyes get a little bit big right there.
Than it is this year. And that's a reform.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I see a little doubt in that face. I could be wrong on that. Anyways, I don't think they believe it for a second. They are not cutting any spending in Washington. It's Washington. They spend all the time. And next year, there's going to be all sorts of emergency, this and this and this, and Ukraine's going to need more money. How many more billions are they going to give over to them too? And we'll, of course, wait and see. Kev was out explaining this as well. Here's what he had to say.
It's a different Congress. It's a new day. It's not that you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
Here we go.
You got 72 hours. This isn't a 1,000-page bill.
It's a short bill. You can read it.
This is 99 pages. And this is different than we've ever had before. We're actually going to spend less money this year than we spent last year. And your viewers have heard me give this analogy before. A debt limit is like the family having a credit card, but you've been charging it up every year and just keep lifting the limit.
Yeah.
This year's different. We now say we're going to spend less. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to look at all what we spend our money on because the mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare, that's all off to the side. So I can only look at about 15% of what we spend our money on.
Okay.
So what we did is, in elements like non-defense, that's going to go below 2022 levels. So that's a very positive. But the other thing we did, we put ourselves on a spending plan. We cap how much we can spend for the next 6 years with government. But we also did something different.
What else?
In this family, we may have a child that able-bodied, not married, no kids, but he's sitting on the couch collecting welfare. We're going to put work requirements on that individual. So he's going to have work requirements. He's going to get a job, and it's going to make the life easier. But we're also going to look at places we've been spending our money that we've wasted that we're going to return, right? Like all that COVID money that we didn't spend, we're going to bring it back. But one of my favorites here is $400 million for CDC, the global fund, where we'd use that hardworking taxpayer money over to China. We're not going to do that. We're going to send that back. And then we did a number of other things here, right? One of the things that's very interesting we did, that the president has been spending money wildly. If he wants to put a new regulation in, we took an executive order of President Trump's, and now we're putting it into law and making it a little tougher, where if he wants to put a new regulation in, he has to cut government if it costs more than $100 million. And then we looked at things about cutting the red tape, that we get so frustrated that we can't build the roads. It takes 7 years. We now reform NEPA, the environmental review. Instead of waiting 7 years, now the studies are only 1 to 2 years. This hasn't been done in 40 years. And then we did something interesting to make government or make Congress consequences for their lack of action. They have 12 appropriation bills that they have to pass every year, and they never do, and they come back with that omnibus. Now we say, if you don't do your job, it's a 1% cut across the board. Okay. So encourage members of Congress, not now with the new Congress, you actually show up, now you're going to have to work. This is going to be the biggest cut by the Congressional Budget Office says in history of where we're going forward. To do all that, we allowed the debt ceiling to go forward for the next 18 months, and we'll readdress it, hopefully with a Republican president and a Republican Senate, to even make it stronger.
All right, nice little talking speech from McCarthy there. Sounds amazing, right? Sounds really good. It's like, wow, that is a really great deal. We do have an amazingly effective conservative House Speaker who is leading us into fiscal sanity, right? Well, here's what Senator Ron Paul has to say about this bill.
The House reached a deal with the White House on the debt limit. Unfortunately, fake conservatives agreed to fake spending cuts, and conservatives were sold out once again. The Biden-McCarthy debt deal will add over $4 trillion in new debt over the next 2 years. The Biden-McCarthy deal never balances the budget, and it cements the COVID spending binge that drove inflation.
So it's strange that in our same government, we can be looking at the same bill and have two entirely different interpretations of this. McCarthy comes out, no, we're rolling it all back. No, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be any of this. You go over to the Senate, Rand Paul says, that's all not true. This is all fake. Same bill, same country, I think still. And we get two entirely different interpretations. I think I know which one I believe.
The Biden-McCarthy deal will push our national debt to nearly $35 trillion in just 2 years. The deal keeps 98% of the expansion and funding of the new IRS agents, and it doesn't cut a penny of Democrats' crony energy giveaways. I will absolutely not vote to expand our national debt by $4 trillion.
Insane.
When the bill reaches the Senate, I will offer a conservative alternative. My solution replaces the fake spending caps with real spending caps on total government spending. The spending caps are part of my 5-penny budget plan that balances the budget in just 5 years.
Woo!
My 5-penny plan creates a mandate that the federal government can't spend more than it brings in. Spending increases are forbidden from exceeding revenue forever.
That makes sense.
Our government's approach to budgeting is entirely irresponsible. No American is allowed to continue running up copious amounts of debt without consequences.
Of course not.
At some point,
we all have to live in reality.
The bills must be paid and spending must stop. If Congress had adopted my original penny plan in 2017, the federal budget would be balanced today. Unfortunately, they didn't have the courage. Thankfully, it's not too late to reverse course. It's time that legislators come together and pass my conservative solution. We can't fight a 5-alarm fire with a water pistol. For once, Congress must have some common sense and pass my conservative solution before it's too late.
We'd like to see it, Rand. Hopefully they do that. I think the Congress should be putting on the penny plan for the entire government. 5 pennies. That's all you get, FBI. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't spend them all in one place, Christopher Wray. Think that would be appropriate. Now we'll see what happens. When this bill lands over in the Senate, though, even though Rand Paul might be opposing it, Chuck Schumer is going to be giddy and thrilled and cram it on through.
So, Mr. President, 3 days ago, President Biden and Speaker McCarthy announced a bipartisan budget agreement that will protect the U.S. economy while eliminating the threat of a catastrophic default. I support the bipartisan agreement that President Biden has produced with Speaker McCarthy. Avoiding default is an absolute imperative. The damage that default would inflict on our country, our economy, our families would be enormous and take years from which to recover. Of course, nobody is getting everything they want. There's give on both sides. But this agreement is the responsible, prudent, and very necessary way forward. Today, the House of Representatives is beginning the process of moving that legislation through the chamber. When this bill arrives in the Senate, it is my plan to bring it to the floor as quickly as possible for consideration.
Gross.
Senators must be prepared to act with urgency to send a final product to the president's desk before the June 5th deadline.
June 5th deadline coming up, and Chuck Schumer is going to cram it on through. So the Republicans will cram it through the House. They'll give it to the Democrats. The Democrats will cram it through the Senate, and then they'll give it over to sleepy Joe Biden, and he will cram it down the gullets of America, making the money printer go brr. And of course, we don't want the country to default. We don't want America to collapse. But that's the point. We don't want the country to default. We don't want America to collapse. And these psychopaths just keep spending like reality doesn't apply to them. We'll continue to see what happens here and continue to follow. Now, let's change gears, my friend, and talk about, well, we're kind of still talking about Congress and our inefficient, disgusting government. But now we have news. Contempt proceedings moving forward against Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI. He is in possession of an FD 1023 form that apparently implicates Joe Biden and the Biden crime family in a $5 million bribery scheme, saying that some foreign national communicated with Sleepy Joe and he was paid $5 million to do something, literally implement policy changes that would serve this client's ends. Comer and other people in the Senate like Chuck Grassley have gotten information about this form through FBI whistleblowers and DOJ and IRS whistleblowers, and they demanded via official formal congressional subpoena that the FBI deliver the document over to them. And we know how important these congressional subpoenas are because people like Steve Bannon and others have gotten prosecuted when they defied them after the January 6th Select Committee issued them. And we've had other historical examples where people like Nancy Pelosi thought that Trump people should be penalized pretty significantly for denying congressional subpoenas. So now the tables have turned. Congress is demanding answers from the FBI. James Comer got snubbed. We learned this yesterday, that the FBI is refusing to give the document over. They told us this. Today, the FBI informed the committee that it will not provide the classified documents that Congress sent a valid subpoena for. The FBI's decision to stiff-arm Congress to hide this information from the American people is obstructionist and unacceptable. While I have a call scheduled with FBI Director Wray today, which we have an update on, we're going to discuss his response. The committee has been clear in its intent to protect congressional oversight, and we are now going to be taking steps to hold FBI Director Wray in contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with a lawful subpoena, saying America and Americans deserve the truth. And the Oversight Committee will continue to demand transparency from this agency. So they had a phone call, and we were also wondering, what the heck are they going to talk about? But apparently, it was a little bit fruitful. In fact, here is what Comer said after the post. He said, I have a call with FBI Director Wray today to discuss the FBI's refusal to comply with my subpoena. He says transparency brings accountability, and the GOP oversight will get answers. Comer showed up on Fox. Here's what he said when he was speaking to them.
Now with more.
Come on, video. We're in the middle of a live stream here.
To produce a document and go into detail on what exactly they did to investigate the validity of the document. But thus far, he won't even admit that they have the document, Sean. He's given us the runaround for 3 weeks. He's just stalling. He said there's good faith effort. They haven't produced anything. They haven't even admitted they have a document. So we don't have confidence in Director Wray. We're already in the process of drafting legislation to hold an oversight committee markup next week to hold FBI Director Wray in contempt of Congress.
Right.
All right, let me ask you, though, most people don't know what a 1023 form is. but my understanding of it is a witness that both you and Senator Grassley describe as a credible witness that makes a very specific allegation that certain actions were taken by then Vice President Biden in exchange for money going to his family. Okay, and that credible witness has brought that to you, and you want to see the document. Now, if that's uncorroborated by the FBI, that would be something probably that would be seen in private, I would guess. Number two, I want to know if when the FBI had this document, knew about this, and what they did to investigate this.
They've had the document for 4 years.
Yeah.
We don't know if they've
What
even
have they done?
investigated it. That's my fear, that they never did anything.
They just sat on
What you
it
look
'cause it
at what's
implicates
happened
their
with
buddy.
the IRS, what the IRS whistleblowers claimed, is they were told to stand down. There's a pattern within our federal government of when looking at any type of wrongdoing by the Biden family, that people in the government bureaucracy have told rank and file government employees to stand down. Or to give them the file and don't worry about it. That's basically what Director Wray has
Sitting
told
on
me.
it, burying
I have
it.
demonstrated a pattern of Joe Biden traveling all over the world, and weeks after he leaves the country, his family starts mysteriously getting wires from that foreign country
Amazing.
into shell companies that then are wired back to the individual family bank
let
account.
me ask you
That's
this.
not normal behavior.
What
is if you're in the Biden
what would
family.
the contempt of the FBI director look like? All right, you've now given him 2 opportunities. You have a phone call with him. They're saying they're cooperating, but they're not going to give you the document. Of course, your committee and Congress has not only a right, but a duty in terms of oversight. What would a subpoena look like in your view? Or contempt ultimately of Congress look like?
Well, we're still drafting, but it's going to look very similar to what the Democrats did with Steve Bannon. I mean, that was a perfect example of a congressional committee holding someone in contempt of Congress.
Yes.
But for Director Wray to issue a statement
Well,
just
it
a few
didn't matter
minutes
for
ago saying
Lois
he's
Lerner, if my memory serves me. It didn't matter for Eric Holder and others that were held in contempt. You know, it seems like those rules only apply to conservatives, Congressman.
Well, we're going to do everything we can to hold him accountable, and we're not messing around. We've already demonstrated a pattern of behavior here that would suggest this is a credible accusation, and we want answers.
All right, Congressman.
All right, that is Representative James Comer, and he's saying we're going to get to the bottom of this. And Steve Bannon was somebody who was prosecuted. Now, the problem here is that Congress, typically, like what happened with the Liz Cheney Scam Select Committee hearings, is she referred the non-compliance with the congressional subpoena over to the DOJ. And the DOJ back then was Joe Biden. And so they prosecuted Steve Bannon, and he went on trial, and he's going to be sentenced, or was already sentenced, I think 60 days, if I remember correctly. But I think it's on appeal. So there's all sorts of stuff going on there. But this is now the Republicans' turn. The Democrats are snubbing their noses. The FBI is in control of the Biden DOJ. So when Congress refers Wray over to the DOJ and say, prosecute this man, just like you prosecuted Steve Bannon, who was also in Trump's administration at one point in time, go and prosecute the FBI. The Biden DOJ is going to be so corrupt, obviously, that they're going to say, no, thank you for the congressional referral, but we're not prosecuting our own side. The FBI is protecting Joe Biden, who runs the DOJ. So obviously we're not going to go and investigate and uncover something that implicates our boss. That would be nuts. Now, apparently the oversight talked with the FBI. Here's what they tell us. They say, today, breaking news. FBI Director Wray, during their phone call today, has confirmed the existence of the FD 1023. So it does exist in their drawer somewhere, probably under Christopher Wray's mattress. There is a form alleging that then Vice President Biden engaged in a criminal bribery scheme with a foreign national. Wray tells Comer, says he's allowing this unclassified record to be reviewed at the FBI, but he hasn't produced it to the committee. Well, you can come over here and look in our office. You can't copy anything. You can't take anything. You can't take pictures of anything. but you can come have a look at it there. So he says, that's not good enough for me. If the FBI fails to hand over the FD 1023 form as required by the subpoena, James Comer will begin contempt of Congress proceedings. So presumably, that will be starting very soon. Now, other FBI directors were asked about this, including this guy. You remember Comey? He got asked about Christopher Wray. What do you think about him? Is he just a good guy, or what's going on here?
Chair James Comer, and I should note Senator Chuck Grassley will do in terms of holding Director Wray in contempt. Should he be turning over this internal document?
I don't know enough about the particular document to say, but
well, it's the document. You know what it is. It's got many numbers in it, but it essentially outlines what a undisclosed witness or whistleblower told officials, and this would concern the Biden family. These accusations that have not been presented with evidence, but from the Oversight Committee, the accusations they've made.
Director Wray is a person of principle, and so I'm sure he's trying to ascertain what's the right thing to do, consistent with Department of Justice policy and tradition.
That's all it is, I'm sure. Just a person of integrity, just trying to do his job appropriately without violating any internal policies, you know? I'm sure it's all it is. Has nothing to do with covering up for Joe Biden. Nothing at all to prevent the Republicans from taking charge again. No, the FBI is totally apolitical, nonpartisan, definitely. Comey, of course, who's on that same team, was working alongside with Strzok and Lisa Page and Andy McCabe and all the others, is going to continue to cover for the agency, even though he knows and was involved in most of the corruption that we were able to talk about here. This is Matt Gaetz, also explaining the power of Congress, says we've used other tools in the past. Now it's time for contempt.
National security apparatus who believe that they ought to make the decisions regardless of who the people elect, and that members of Congress are just like sand passing through the hourglass, and they really are the permanent existence of the government. And that's very dangerous to our republic and to our rights. We have already exposed in this Congress that the CIA was operating as an election interference organization. While all these CIA officials were telling us that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian information operation, the CIA itself was running a domestic information operation to interfere with the election. And what was so devious about it, when former CIA officials wouldn't sign that letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, people in the CIA used leverage points and pressure points to try to get their former employees to toe the line and to continue to push this false narrative. So that is the work we are uncovering. And I've long said we have to use the power of the subpoena and the power of the purse, but I now believe we have to use the power of contempt. Jamie Comer, you mentioned him. Yeah. He is hot on the trail right now regarding specific payments that may have been made to and through the Biden family in August of 2020. And so he's asked the FBI, give us all these specific reports that just say Biden during that month. And you know what the FBI's response was?
Too many of them.
That it was overly broad and the responsive documents might be too voluminous. 1 month for just the Biden name in the summer of 2020. That is how extensive the documentation is on the web of financial corruption around the Biden crime family.
All right, so that is Matt Gaetz saying it's time for Congress to use the power of Congress as appropriate, as articulated in the Constitution. And here is another congressperson. This is Representative Rick Perry on the Just the News program.
Your thoughts on Chris Wray's unwillingness to work with Congress?
Well, he needs to be held in contempt. Obviously, the documents don't belong to the FBI. They belong to the American people along with the truth. And it's been a long time that the FBI has overstepped its bounds and its authority. We never constructed the Stasi or the secret police in the United States of America, but that's apparently who they think they are.
And they can do whatever jobs they want. They're created and they're funded to do a job. They're not doing that job. They're just covering up for their political allies because they're partisan hacks.
And, look, unfortunately, we can't press charges, but we certainly can refer charges.
That's right.
And if he shows up on Capitol Hill, if he shows up in the House chamber, he can certainly end up in the Brig here.
Whoa.
So, look, I think those are harsh words, but we just can't have this defiance. The information, as we understand it, is not classified.
Right.
We don't know of any ongoing investigations where it would make a difference, and investigations that last for years and years, while they essentially wait till the statute of limitations run out and that type of thing cannot be allowed. And unfortunately, they now have a track record, a verifiable track record of those
covering
kind of
up
things.
for their enemies, for their allies.
Heavy is the head that
against their
wears the
enemies.
crown. He's the guy at the top of the agency. Either he needs to comply or there needs to be severe consequences. The most extreme consequences that the legislative body can provide for. That's what needs to happen with an individual like him who's defiant about the truth that the American people deserve and own.
All right. So very strong language, right, from Representative Rick Perry. And a lot of people saying this is Congress just screaming and caterwauling, and this is just the Republicans going after the Democrats, and it's a bunch of just nonsense. But you remember some time ago when Nancy Pelosi was in charge, not that long ago, and they were also talking about holding Trump officials in contempt. And they were hysterical over this. They were talking about filling up the congressional jails. So this came over from roll call. They said that there's a Capitol basement here. This is the Lincoln Catafalque. It's seen through the bars in the chamber below the Capitol crypt. This is not the Brig. It's not the jail, but it certainly looks like one. And when Trump was president, all the Democrats and all the lefties were hysterical about this. In fact, here's one article. Speaker Pelosi, this was posted back in May 8th, 2019. Trump was still in charge. This is pre-COVID. But Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats screaming from the rooftops, Trump, 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 Trump. Speaker Pelosi resurfaced one of the Capitol's most enduring mysteries when answering a question about whether Democrats might imprison Trump officials who defy Congress. The House jail is what she said. When somebody asked her about it, Nancy said, well, we do have a little jail down here in the basement of the Capitol. But if we were arresting all of the people in the administration, we would have an overcrowded jail situation, and I'm not for that. The House Judiciary Committee approved a resolution to hold Attorney General Bill Barr in contempt of Congress over his refusal to share the full unredacted report of Robert Mueller in 2016. Even if the full House holds him in contempt, the Justice Department likely won't hand over the complete report. That has Democrats mulling other options to get it. So this is literally the reverse of this current situation. What were the Democrats screaming about? Inherent contempt. It's a long dormant power that allows Congress to rely on its own constitutional authority to detain and imprison contemners until they comply with a congressional demand. Now, Pelosi didn't go that far. She appeared to rule out using Congress's inherent contempt power to detain administration officials. But it's still a hypothetical. Even senators are fielding questions about this. A staffer in Wisconsin Democrat Tammy Baldwin's office was overheard on Tuesday answering a phone about the existence of a congressional jail. Capitol police officers from multiple divisions say no jailhouse exists, but we do have a holding facility. So anyways, you get the point. So there's going to be a lot of people screaming that what the Republicans are doing here is out of bounds, outside the rules, and so on. But the Democrats do the same thing, and they were screaming from the rooftops, imprison everybody, imprison Trump, and they still want him in prison. And they don't give a damn about all of the other conditions. Now they'll sit here and scream to us about how inappropriate this is, even though they're oftentimes the same people who use the same tools and techniques. So the FBI, in possession of a document that appears to implicate Joe Biden specifically in a quid pro quo. They've been hiding the document, sitting on it for months, wanting it to expire, wanting it to become irrelevant. Congress is now moving forward, deciding to hold Christopher Wray in contempt, and we'll see what comes of it. Of course, we will continue to cover. Thank you for liking this video, and thank you for subscribing wherever it is you are watching it. And that, my friends, is it for that segment. Now, we have one final topic to get into. And here it is. Before we jump into your questions and your super chats, James O'Keefe, founder of Project Veritas, now excommunicated. Some people thought fired, but apparently Project Veritas, the company that we thought fired him, didn't actually do that. They instead wanted to keep him in this limbo status so that he couldn't do anything, so that when James O'Keefe started a new organization called the O'Keefe Media Group, that they would just turn around and sue him and say, oh, you can't do that. We have non-competes and we have non-disparagement clauses, which means James O'Keefe is sidelined, just like they try to do with other conservative commentators throughout this ecosphere, people like Tucker Carlson, all coming under attack through lawfare to take them out of the game when they're most effective. So Project Veritas, this organization which was supposed to be about truth and exposing the left, is now trying to take out somebody who was instrumental in their creation and their long-term success. Disgusting behavior, but that's what happens when you have other people taking over your organization and then using it as political warfare to take out people who are effective. I think we're going to see a lot more of it, unfortunately. We are going to go through the lawsuit. We have some reaction from our friend Amuse on Twitter, a good follow. And then James O'Keefe is going to be on with Tim Pool. So if you're looking for his reaction, that is where you can find that. But first, let's take a look at this lawsuit and see if we can piece together exactly what is happening here. The document was filed May 31st. It's 37 pages and then some. There is a bunch of exhibits, addendums. You can see the full PDF is 70 pages, but we're just going to take a look at the complaint and then we'll fast forward through the exhibits. But just so we're clear, this is Project Veritas, which until very recently was synonymous with James O'Keefe. Project Veritas basically threw James O'Keefe out for some reason, and now they are suing him in the Southern District of New York, a very unfriendly jurisdiction, by the way. Not going to be favorable to James O'Keefe. They are suing him and his new company called the O'Keefe Media Group, also known as OMG, and they're suing these two other people that we're going to hear about, Maxwell and Iatropoulos. And if you're not familiar with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, they have been very impactful in their reporting. They've sent many people undercover to have dates and dinners and interactions with other people in high-profile positions and expose them and the corruption behind them. And has been very effective, and so many people were a bit shocked when there was a separation between the two teams. Now he's being sued. The lawsuit says, James O'Keefe, being known as the founder of an organization, does not entitle that person to run amok and to put his own interests ahead of the organization. O'Keefe has failed in his duties to Project Veritas, causing it serious and significant damage, saying he must be held accountable. And he's been working with two other people called Maxwell and Iatropoulos, and they created their own new company called OMG, and they must be sued. The parties involved are Project Veritas, the Project Veritas Action Fund, James O'Keefe, and the other defendants. The complaint is being filed in the Southern District of New York. They say that's appropriate. And they say these are the facts that give rise to the complaint. They say Project Veritas and our organizations are nonprofits. We're formed under the law. Our vision is aimed at exposing corruption, dishonesty, self-dealing, waste, and fraud, and other misconduct. As not-for-profit organization, they say that Project Veritas relies on donations from private donors. They maintain a database of their donors, including identity. They restrict access to the information. They keep it password protected, and they require other people who have access to the donors to not disclose it. So you see where this is going. They're going to say James took the donor list. James O'Keefe founded this organization that literally threw him out, which makes my skin crawl, in 2010. He was, through his separation, the CEO of the organization. But he was suspended, they say, but not yet removed, right? Wasn't exactly fired. They say on June 22nd, 2010, O'Keefe entered into an employment agreement with the company, with the operative version amended in 2022. Okay, so they got him to sign a new document. They were probably planning this for a while. He signed a new employment agreement. He thinks everything's fine. Hey, James, this is just something we got to do for HR. Everybody's signing it. You okay? Yes, signs it. Signed it on September 30th. As part of that agreement, O'Keefe agreed to certain terms both during and after his employment. In paragraph 1 of the agreement, it says employees shall devote employees' full working time to the employment. Another agreement says that Project Veritas owns everything, like everything. Designs, intellectual property, trade secrets, video, audio, everything is ours. O'Keefe acknowledged that certain information is confidential. He agreed to keep it in the highest confidence and not disclose it. He maintained these obligations. They say employee expressly agrees to the terms of the paragraph. There was also a non-disparagement clause that O'Keefe signed saying you can't talk crap about Project Veritas. There's a liquidated damages provision, which means you don't even argue about it. You just automatically win and you get the damage. Liquidated damages mean you just assign what the value is. If there's a breach, you've already articulated what the breach is. Okay, oftentimes in a contract dispute, you'll have a disagreement about what constitutes a breach and what the damages are for the breach. You were supposed to do this thing, you didn't, and I'm out. You were supposed to deliver my refrigerator by Thursday. I had another shipment of food coming in on Thursday. The food needs to be in the refrigerator. You gave me the refrigerator on Saturday, so all my food expired, which means I lost $10,000 of food, which means you owe me the $10,000. I've got to prove that damage. How much food was it? 10,000? Okay. There are other situations where you can just say, look, if my thing is not delivered on Thursday, it's $10,000 every time it's not delivered. Okay? You say, I agree, totally. I understand that. That's what I understand the contract to be. In the Project Veritas contract, they say that. For non-disparagement, it's $100,000 per breach. That's in the contract. The employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from engaging in outside activities that would hinder his work with Project Veritas. So they're still saying that he's basically there. He hasn't been fired. He has just been suspended, not removed, okay? Was not removed. He still works for them, according to them, which means that he is still bound by all of these agreements. It also prohibits O'Keefe from soliciting two categories of people. O'Keefe can't go and get employees or donors. O'Keefe agreed that for 1 year after his employment, he's not going to take any employees. Probably did. Employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from communicating with any donors from Project Veritas. So he also can't get access to those lists. Also, the employment requires that upon separation of employment, but I think they just said, though, that he was not removed. But they say separation, okay? They're using that word as a term of art. They're saying upon separation of employment. You're still employed, but we're separated, I guess. They say that O'Keefe shall return any property and all of the devices and so on. They say they have a company handbook. The handbook prohibits being intimidating or disrespectful to coworkers. So with all that background, they say that during O'Keefe's employment, the board became aware of serious allegations by Project Veritas employees about a troubling workplace. For instance, board of directors heard O'Keefe routinely behaved unprofessionally during team meetings, screamed at coworkers. O'Keefe was alleged to have particularly targeted female employees with mean-spirited comments, I'm sure, about their lack of contributions to the company and about personal situations like pregnancies. Employees allege that O'Keefe had strained relationships with several donors. He was routinely late for meetings, rude at VIP events, and other things. They say O'Keefe was routinely late for work, canceled them at the last minute, and so on. Now, other employees allege that they had personally observed obscene messages between O'Keefe and various women on social media when accessing his phone for work-related matters. They also learned of alleged financial misconduct. And we've read about all of this stuff. Multiple employees allege that O'Keefe used Project Veritas to run personal errands for them. Get my laundry, clean my boat, repair my boat, do other similar things for O'Keefe. O'Keefe also allegedly used his credit card from some personal expenses, lavish expenses and other things. Apparently $10,000 for a helicopter flight. And O'Keefe has explained most of this stuff, by the way. he has responded to this. We read through a lot of these allegations originally. What happened was, I think, Project Veritas, which was now without O'Keefe, they released a video, they released a statement, and O'Keefe responded to some of this. They directed the organization to pay for his first-class air travel, even when they didn't approve first-class flights per the organization policy. He used his Project Veritas card for expensive hotel rooms, luxury suites. He's the CEO, man. Directing the organization to pay for expenses and other things, and he caused the organization to pay for private cars. A lot of money, $150,000 over the 18 months. Now, just to be clear about this, okay, James O'Keefe is a CEO of a major organization. They had 50 plus employees, I believe. And part of his job was to travel around and talk to people about these things. So he's on airplanes all the time. I've seen him on multiple shows. So part of that is expensive. That's part of the job. You got to pay for those things. O'Keefe took it upon himself without authority to terminate the employment of the CFO, and he admitted that he did the terminating. So they say now, as the CEO, he did something he didn't have action to do. The board took immediate action. The board created a special audit committee to investigate the allegations, hired outside counsel. By February 6th, by majority vote, the board placed O'Keefe on paid leave. Didn't fire him, but they suspended his authority to hire and fire staff for 180 days. They required him to surrender his company credit card, and they restrict his access to proprietary information, including donor lists. But they explicitly said that he remains as CEO and member of the board. Isn't that weird? So you can be the CEO, but don't have your credit card, don't have any authority to hire and fire. He's on paid leave. So he is still getting paid according to them, but he's got to give up everything else. So paid leave. So I wonder if those checks are still coming into O'Keefe. After authorization to use the card was revoked, he continued to use the credit card for personal expenses and racked up $19,000. He participated in the February 6th meeting. Employee testimony was heard. He refused to participate February 10th. And O'Keefe was suspended as the CEO, but not removed from the board, indefinitely pending the resolution of the board's investigation. So then, on February 15th, Project Veritas and the executive director put out a statement. They said explicitly, James O'Keefe has not been removed from Project Veritas. No, if you remove him, then he's free. The statement notes that the board members all love James O'Keefe. They were volunteers handpicked by O'Keefe. And in that statement, it was explicitly denied that the actions regarding O'Keefe and the Pfizer company, we will never be brought to you by Pfizer, they said. O'Keefe sent an email outlining terms for his return, including the resignation of all board members and officers, and vesting unilateral control back to him. Otherwise, he said, I'm not returning to employment. So the board did not terminate O'Keefe's employment, but rather they intended to reinstate him with appropriate safeguards, if you believe that, for a minute. O'Keefe was not formally removed from the board until April 24th. O'Keefe was not formally terminated from his employment until May 15th. Okay, so apparently now he has been fired. But prior to that firing, they say in response to his suspension, O'Keefe immediately began breaching his obligations under our agreements. So now he's been fired, and they're going to say that, a bunch of provisions should still apply to him, like the non-disparagement clause and all the things. On February 17th, O'Keefe formed OMG, based in New York where he lives and where Project Veritas is headquartered. They're putting this in here saying that this is too close to home, in other words. He's going to be operating right in our backyard, and we have a non-compete for that reason. According to its website, OMG is a media organization managed by O'Keefe with about the same mission as Project Veritas. OMG is a company whose website describes itself as having an army of journalists, building an army of investigators with the most elite journalists in the world. The website even refers to never being shut down again because O'Keefe owns it. Forming and operating OMG was in violation of our prohibited outside activities. They say James O'Keefe has a non-compete So he can't do that. They say O'Keefe made multiple appearances in which he falsely stated that he was terminated from Project Veritas. He showed up on these shows, went on the Charlie Kirk show, falsely implied that his separation was part of the aftermath of the Pfizer story, falsely stated that he was thrown out of Project Veritas. Kind of sounds like he was to me. The appearance on the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG. O'Keefe also went on War Room, also falsely stated that he had been removed from Project Veritas. The appearance of the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG. He also hopped on with Russell Brand, said he was thrown out of Project Veritas. Also for the benefit of OMG. Went on Mark Levin, went on Human Events, hung out with Ben Shapiro, said Project Veritas had been stolen from me. Then he went on the Megyn Kelly show. Shout out to Megyn Kelly. Falsely stated that he was terminated from employment with Project Veritas. They say that all of these statements are disparaging of Project Veritas. They were intended to discredit the board of directors, and they're all breaches of our agreements. They say James also disparaged the board by falsely insinuating that Pfizer orchestrated the suspension, or that it was somehow done to mollify them, which is curious. Pfizer is very, very powerful. It is an interesting coincidence. But they say the Pfizer video was released nearly 2 weeks prior to the complaints prompting the investigation. They say O'Keefe misappropriated confidential information, here it is, by taking donor lists and contact information. Unreleased investigations, he rebranded as OMG. He took the content they're alleging. After his suspension, O'Keefe engaged in a campaign to disparage Project Veritas to make donations come to his new company. And he also brought employees and contractors and attempted to poach them to come work for OMG. O'Keefe recorded and published a video, which has later been removed, posted that on Vimeo, announcing he was packing up his personal belongings and starting anew. Didn't resign, and he was generally soliciting employees to come work with him. He says, our mission continues. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take a new name. It may no longer be called Veritas. I will need a bunch of people around me. I'll make sure you know how to find me. O'Keefe continues to solicit Project Veritas's donors. He sent an email to another donor, sent a form solicitation email to at least 2 Project Veritas donors who are not OMG donors. He said, hey there, I know you've been a supporter of my work in the last year, and he links back to his own subscriptions page. They say O'Keefe misappropriated the property by taking the equipment, donor, and intellectual property, and they confirm that several Project Veritas staff have also already joined OMG, including R.C. Maxwell and Anthony Etropoulos. Etropoulos also violated his agreements. Etropoulos signed it too, and he violated 11, 2, 13, 15, 16, 17, 21, 22, and 23. And so did Etropoulos. Same terms, and also liquidated damages at $10,000 per breach. They say that the employment agreement also confirms for us that if O'Keefe breaches this or threatens to breach, Project Veritas can seek injunction to stop him from doing things. O'Keefe already acknowledged that a breach will result in irreparable harm when he signed the document. And the employment agreement provides that if Project Veritas obtains an injunction, that he shall then immediately become liable to pay attorney's fees and costs incurred to obtain the injunction. Okay, so it's a pretty bulletproof agreement that he signed, which gives them a lot of options to come after him. And so it's important that he responds aggressively at this stage, because even the injunction gives them an opportunity to go after the attorney's fees alone. If the court does not preliminarily enjoin O'Keefe and OMG from soliciting donors and employees, they may have solicited them all by the time we win a judgment. So saying, Judge, our ship is sinking now. They're taking all of our donors. Stop them before they continue to do anything. We've got a couple counts. We'll fly through these. Count 1, breach of contract. They say that there was a signed agreement that bound both parties. Project Veritas was the beneficiary of this. O'Keefe agreed to the agreement in writing. He used the donor list and other information for his own company. He says he acknowledges that it was confidential. He rebranded our stuff, took affiliated people. He said that he would not engage in ventures that compete with us, that increase the likelihood of a conflict of interest. And he agreed to all these terms. Now he's soliciting employees and donors and prospective donors, even though he agreed he wouldn't do that. We demanded that he return all of his property on May 17th. He failed to return the donor lists. He maintained a toxic workplace culture when he was working with us. He already agreed to $100,000 in liquidated damages. And they say accordingly, as a direct and proximate result of O'Keefe, we, Project Veritas, have been irreparably harmed, and we're entitled to injunctions. 1, they want O'Keefe to stop disparaging Project Veritas and uphold the non-disparagement agreement. They want O'Keefe to have an injunction to stop him from contacting or soliciting donors in violation of the agreement. They want to stop him from soliciting employees or from using any of the confidential information that was in the company outside of the company. And they want to stop him from keeping and failing to return any other property. They also want attorney's fees. They say, unless the judge does something here, we're going to continue to suffer irreparable harm. We're going to lose donors, we're going to suffer reputational harm, and we're going to lose injury to our goodwill. So the balance of all of these equities, they say, Judge, falls entirely in favor of Project Veritas. And if you grant this injunction, O'Keefe is going to suffer no prejudice under the ruling. They say, lastly, an immediate injunction is necessary because without it, any final injunction that plaintiffs win will be rendered ineffectual. If O'Keefe is not enjoined now, he's going to have solicited all or enough donors and employees to wreck everything. They say he also violated the Trade Secrets Act, saying that O'Keefe took and failed to return the donor list, misappropriated our trade secrets, said this was done willfully and maliciously, and that as a result, they've suffered actual losses. They say that O'Keefe breached his fiduciary duties. He had an obligation and a duty to the company. Under New York law, when you've got confidence in the integrity, you need confidence and integrity, you get superior influence and control, you're held to a fiduciary standard. Therefore, O'Keefe had a duty to act in good faith. O'Keefe acknowledged that they have that duty, and O'Keefe didn't abide by that duty. O'Keefe also breached his duty of loyalty to the company, saying that he also converted materials, which is basically a civil version of kind of theft. You convert something that isn't yours into yours. He took the donor lists and then utilized them for his own efforts. We have a replevin claim, failing to return the donor lists. So the property needs to go back. They want indemnification. They want tortious interference with a contract. A lot of different claims here. A lot of very duplicative claims. We'll fast forward through a lot of this. Another one here that we'll fast forward through this. This is a similar claim against Iatropoulos. So another breach of contract against, it sounds like one of the employees that O'Keefe brought over with him. So similar claims against him. Another breach of contract against Maxwell, another employee that came over, and another tortious interference claim against him. And OMG, because they're now working at OMG. And so as we get to the end of this complaint, Project Veritas is asking the court to declare the following. Declare that James O'Keefe is in breach of his employment agreement, in violation of fiduciary duties, and in violation of his duty of loyalty. Declare that Iatropoulos broke the contract. Maxwell broke the contract. OMG interfered with the employment agreement. O'Keefe misappropriated trade secrets. They want O'Keefe liable for all costs of this defense. They want a preliminary injunction. This means the court is demanding action. They want O'Keefe stopped from doing any of the following: soliciting or contacting Project Veritas donors, employees, or contractors, disparaging the plaintiffs, talking badly about those loser idiots at Project Veritas, idiots, obtaining, using, or disclosing plaintiffs' confidential information, or keeping and failing to return plaintiffs' property. They want all of it back. They also want the court to issue a permanent injunction enjoining Iatropoulos and Maxwell from not returning the property. They want to compel O'Keefe to account for his official conduct under the New York business laws. They want to award Project Veritas compensatory and punitive damages. So they really want to make this expensive. They want to disgorge all of the funds which O'Keefe and OMG were unjustly enriched on. So all of those donos and subscriptions and all the money that they're raising, they want the court to take all of that money. They say that that was gained illegally through the misappropriation of Project Veritas trade secrets. They also want to disgorge his salary during his period of disloyalty. Okay, so all of the money that they paid him when he was on leave, they want it back. Award plaintiffs exemplary damages, really make it sting, and award plaintiffs reasonable attorney's fees and other things that were conducted out of violation of this agreement. So they want to make it hurt bad, 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 bad. They basically threw him out of his company. He's taking all of their employees, all of their donors. They're spiraling into an abyss, saying it's going to cause irreparable damage. And now they want to take him out, even though he's not allowed to use or work with them anymore after they put him on leave. He is now being sued for starting another company. And what they allege is violating their trade agreements and breaching a contract. They say plaintiffs demand a trial by jury on all claims, respectfully submitted by Jay Woolman over at their Randazza Legal Group. He hails from Connecticut. So very, very stern demands in there. They want this thing to hurt badly. This is the new employment agreement that apparently they signed recently. This was on 6/22/2010. That was the original agreement date, but this is when it was amended. At-will employment agreement. Start date 6/20/22. Compensation almost $500,000 on that as the CEO. At-will agreement. Responsibilities, you can see all of it's here. Full working time, complete, final, unfettered control. Compensation is going to be in there. At-will employment, paid time, additional paid time, health insurance, intellectual property. Project Veritas, sole owner of all rights. We saw this in the filing. To the extent that questions arise about whether Project Veritas owns anything, employee hereby expressly irrevocably sells, transfers all things. This is going to be a lot. This is going to be a battle. Confidential information, and presumably he signed this document. There's another exhibit as well. This looks like it might be the, let's see what this is. Author is at-will employment agreement for press secretary. Okay, so these are for the other people, for R.C. Maxwell. That's his term. So that's the Maxwell agreement. This is the Anthony Iatropoulos agreement. So they're using DocuSigns on this stuff. And let's see if James had a signature. Probably also a DocuSign. Yeah, there it is. James O'Keefe, 9/30/2022. DocuSigned. So we've got the DocuSign code right there, and I'm sure they'll trace it back to his email and all that stuff. And this is going to be a battle, no doubt about it. This is going to be a battle. And so let's take a look at some other reaction on this. We had a nice comment from our friend Amuse, who was talking about employment law and about what New York might say about this. If you can just fire somebody and not pay them and then continue to demand they don't work, it's almost like slavery. It's like you own somebody without paying them. Kind of troubling. So Amuse, great follow on Twitter at Amuse, says Project Veritas is suing its founder. They claim they never fired him, that he's in violation of his employment agreement by starting a new company. We read the full lawsuit, and there's another take on this. He said down here, when Project Veritas stopped paying O'Keefe, they violated both his employment agreement and federal and state labor laws. They created hostile work environment then, and then constituted constructive termination. So what they did in how they released him was horrific. And they said, no, we were going to bring him back with guardrails and all of this stuff. So it's basically constructive termination. You didn't technically fire him, but you fired him, okay? Everybody knows you fired him. And he was working somewhere else. So you can't keep him as this pseudo-employee that you're not paying or giving any power to sideline him off the game. When he starts to get back into it, now you want to say that you never let him go? Feels like it is constructive termination. And I think everybody knew it. And Amuse tells us it's a violation of both federal and New York state law to not pay him. Project Veritas claims in its lawsuit that O'Keefe was never fired. They just stopped paying him and stopped giving him access to everything and allowed him to do all of these things. So the great questions that come from our friend Amuse on all of this. Why are they doing this? Why, oh why? Why was James removed from Project Veritas? To silence him. Why did Project Veritas stop paying James? To silence him. Why does Project Veritas claim they didn't fire James? To silence him. Saying they're using a novel legal theory that James should not be allowed to work as a reporter or start a new company. He was fired on February 10th, received his last paycheck on the 20th, swallowed his pride, resumed work, started a new company. Now they want a federal judge to bar him. Why? To silence him. Who's pulling the strings at Project Veritas? Great question. We don't know the answer to it. But is it a coincidence? I don't think so. Feels like there is a hidden agenda to take out the conservatives. And Tucker Carlson may have come down as a result of the Dominion lawsuit. James O'Keefe was being sidelined by his own company that he founded. And there's going to be more of this to come, I do believe. If you want to hear from James O'Keefe, he's going to be joining Tim Pool tonight in just a few short minutes. And so that's where you can go catch him right now. Since this show is now over, you can head on over there in a short minute. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground. Good updates on Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. We know that the FBI is going to have some contempt proceedings initiated against them. And of course, we talked about the debt ceiling, which is likely going to be passed any minute now, this new debt bill. Gross. But now it's time, my friends, to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. And I want to thank everybody who sent in the amazing super chats on this very lovely day. The first one in the house that came in was from our friend Spuds. Spud says, might as well pass gas. Talking about our very gaseous Congress people who just bloviate all day in Congress. We also want to thank Toby Clear. Says, where the people's voice is not heard, there will be revolution. This comes from Maitreya, the world's teacher. Says, leakers are VIP heroes, referencing Benjamin. I don't know what any of this, I don't really know what a lot of these words are or who that person is. But where the people's voice is not heard, there will be revolution. It's a great comment. Yeah, and it's why people need to be heard. You can go back to like the Boston Tea Party, okay? And the founding of this country was not being heard. No taxation without representation. Zulu's here. What's up, Zulu? Says, do you know of any prohibitions for congressmen participating in professional sports? For instance, can Marjorie-Taylor Greene legally run in the Kentucky Derby? Oh, it's a horse-faced joke, Zulu. Same question, but they got in from a bad election. Use the same example. Same question, but they got in from a bad election. Do I know? I don't think I'm understanding this. For instance, can Marjorie-Taylor Greene legally run in the Kentucky Derby? Well, no, that's for horses. So the same question. Can Marjorie-Taylor Greene legally run in a bad election? Use the same example. I don't know what the hell's going on right now. However, I don't think it is appropriate for Congress people to be running in the Kentucky Derby because they're not horsies. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question, Zulu. But I don't think Marjorie looks like a horse. Do you? Fred says counting to 31 trillion would take 982,700 years. Yeah, have you seen the difference between like a million seconds, a million months, million seconds, billion seconds? Right. Yeah, what's the difference? Here you go. Here you go. What's the difference between 1 million and 1 billion seconds? Just so we're clear on this. 1 million seconds, just so we can do the math, is about 12 days. It's 12 days like a vacation, right? A billion seconds, so like what we send over to Ukraine, quite regularly, 30 years. So 1 million, 12 days, 1 billion is 30 years, if you counted, or in time. 1 billion seconds is 30 years. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 trillion seconds, what we're going to spend 4 of over these next couple of years, is 30,000 years. 12 days, 30 years, 30,000 years. See how that goes? So yeah, Congress is nuts. They're just going to keep spending and spending and spending. This one came in from Patrick Parker. Hey, Patrick invited some new members over into the chat. Big welcomes to Adam M, Vinny V, Father Williams in the house. Shout out to Father William. Wow. We have Tara Rayner. We all better behave ourselves. Father Williams in the house. And In God We Trust also joining us. Might have joined us with Father William. I don't know. But welcome, Tara. Welcome, In God. And welcome others. Another one from Zulu says, I agree that the legislative branch should hold dominion over any branch they want. It is certainly totally constitutionally valid with no conceivable downside. And obviously Zulu's being facetious here. So it sounds like Zulu agrees with Pelosi and Liz Cheney that Congress should be able to subpoena anybody they want, and there are consequences for not following through with the subpoena. Interesting. Yeah, it's a good comment there from Zulu. Hey, Vi Victus. It's stuck in my head from K Bean. K Bean. We talked about that yesterday. This one came in from Vianticus Prime. Vi Victus. Stuck in my head. We learned what that word means yesterday. That phrase means. It's Latin. Essentially means if you're defeated and you just got beaten, don't expect any leniency from being defeated. All right. Just get used to that fact and deal with it, is how I interpreted it. So it's don't expect any benefits after you've lost. You've lost. Good comment from V. Thanks for the reminder, K-Bean. This one came in from Jonathan Jenkins. Says, in order for Congress to spend money, it has to go through the Appropriations Committee. Why am I teaching Civics 101? Well, I guess the point is they're spending. They're spending, spending, spending. So she's communicating that to all of us. And they're saying that the mechanics of that process are going to save us from the upper limits. I don't know. Why am I teaching Civics 101? I don't know. It's a good question. Sounds like you know it though. And I appreciate you submitting the super chat. I guess I'm asking, who are you explaining it to? Are you explaining it to Marjorie? Maybe she just learned that. I don't know. Michael Swade says, I donated to PV. I want to sue the board for breach of their fiduciary duty by suspending James over spurious claims. Well, that's an interesting comment. There might be some opportunity for litigation on that. We'll see what James O'Keefe says and what his response looks like. But certainly there will be more to come. Trust Two Kids is here. Says, thanks, Rob. This is the best money I've ever spent. Thank you, Trust Two Kids. I agree. Much better than spending money on endless wars and new fronts. He's making a reference to the Lindsey Graham comment that the Ukrainians took out of context. Says, the best money I ever spent. The Ukrainians spliced and diced Lindsey Graham for that one. Hey, it's Dolphin Fan is the man. Brought in 5 new members. Mrs. Hayes coming in. Rye B, welcome. Gabe is here. A Bad Poet got a gift. Andy Gorski. And hey, if you are not familiar with this process, if you're watching on YouTube, my understanding is you have to go into your settings on the chat and turn on allow me to be gifted a membership. Like accept gift membos. I heard that from somebody. So if you want a gift, then go check that out on YouTube. Change your setting so that you can get an invite. And hey, Adam M is here. What's up, Adam? He says, Yellen also now working the printer next to Powell. Oh, yeah. Do we have a good Janet Yellen printer? Thank you, Adam. Adam, thanks for being a member for 3 months, my man. I appreciate that. Hopefully you're enjoying it. We do member-only streams in the mornings, and we stick around for our after parties, and so we'd love to see you there. Adam M says, Yellen also now working the printer. Do we have a good Yellen meme? I don't know. We need to get one. All right, and so let's take a look now over at Twitter and our friends on Rumble. Fat Slice says, Lindsey Graham's a neocon warmonger. I think he believes it is the best money he's ever spent. Yeah, Janek says Graham is an idiot. Yeah, I think that's true too. Okay, and so let's say hello to what's going on over on Twitter. And then we will wrap it up on the day. Is anybody watching on Twitter? Does anybody even care who's watching? Oh, guess what? I'm watching myself. Gosh. All right, that's okay. Let's see who else is here in the comments section. Who else did we have? Deplorable Fred is in the house. Says reading a bad bill and still voting yay is worse than not reading it and voting yay. Says counting to 31 trillion would take 1 million years, just under 1 million years. Gosh, from Deplorable Fred. Good comments there. V says, I'm just liking how no one in Congress is talking about the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. In all this FBI and CIA, unaccountable and election interference and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a lot. We're talking about a lot of meaningless stuff, you know. Good to see you, V. Thanks for being here. On it says, great points, Mr. Gouveia. I learned a few things. And Al Holman says, the bill is stinky, stinky cologne. Amazing. Adam M says, Rob, I made YouTube channel videos I posted today. They got 0 views. Well, keep going. Keep posting. You might want to adjust your titles. You might want to adjust your thumbnails. If you're getting 0 views, you might not be showing up in search. Just keep posting. Keep making adjustments. One of the good ways to get started is by targeting, very popular search terms. That's how I got my start on YouTube. I would target very specific phrases that I knew people were searching for and I'd make videos about that. All for the law firm stuff, all very specific law firm stuff. So that might be a good thing to try over there. And my friends, let's also take a look at what's going on over on locals. And here's what we're going to do. So we're out of live streams on locals. So we're going to do our after party right now. We're going to go through the after party right now and hit some of the locals comments. And then we're going to come back. So this is what we do normally on our after parties. We've got some good comments here. And here's what's going on over on locals. Who's in the house? We've got John Allen. He says, here's the font. We got a couple comments here from John. Oh, John sent in some tips. Oh, look who's here. It's Hunter's Crack Dealer. He says, hey, Rob, Hunter's Crack Dealer's here. Oh, man, he's back. He says, what's going on with your stream? I mean, sales are down. Crack supplies are beginning to overload the warehouse. Not pushing the product enough, my man. Must be because you keep streaming over on Rumble. Come on, man, you're slacking. And on that subject, what's the news on my favorite client, Hunty? Is he broke? from that wretched money-grabbing baby mama? What's the current news on him? You know, he's been slacking on buying product. Yeah. But seriously, as always, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you, John, for the 2 nice tips over on Rumble. And yeah, basically, we ran out of... when we were doing the Kerry Lake stream on Locals, we were restarting the streams on Locals like 4 times a day. And so we ran out of live streams on Locals. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do our after party today. All of our right now, all of our live streams reset tomorrow in June. And so we'll get back to the usual deal later. But yeah, so O'Keefe's coming up soon, and I don't want to waste time starting up a whole separate stream just for the after party. So we'll just knock out this shortly here today, and then we'll come back tomorrow, Locals friends, and we'll do the usual tomorrow. But a couple comments came in from our amazing friends over on Locals. JC the Music Man said the following. He says, if O'Keefe gets booted from OMG, will he have to change his legal name? Good question. Yeah, he's running out of companies. I mean, it's not like he would sign a non-compete contract that would ultimately force himself not to compete with himself. People have a right to work where they choose. Donors also have a right to give their money to whomever they choose. PV does not have exclusive rights to other people's rights to choose. The lawsuit sounds like a bunch of big words that sound like they are claiming they have rights over O'Keefe as if they own him. I highly doubt he ever even agreed to any of these. Won't they have to prove that he signed the documents? Yeah, they will. I mean, it looks like he signed it. The question is really going to be about enforceability and about the terms of that agreement. I mean, generally, you know, non-compete clauses and non-disparagement clauses, they're looked at with a lot of scrutiny because we want people to have the freedom to get out there and engage in society. We don't want people to be limited and locked into crazy deals that that they can't get out of. So good comment from our friend Jeremy on Locals. This one came in from Viva Maga. Says, what is up with the now formally based Mark Randazza representing Project Veritas versus OMG? Mark Randazza. I DM'd Rackets the law pope since Randazza is the lawyer that he hired. Wow. I don't know. I don't know who that lawyer is. Yeah, I don't know anything about that law firm. I mean, it's a nice complaint if I can be honest about it. I mean, this is a very well articulated complaint they've assembled here. And it is concerning if you're in James O'Keefe's position. So I think that means they're working on they're going to have to work on a nice substantive response. No doubt about it. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that is all about. Very curious. Interesting to know. Okay. Yeah, and Andy's here. Andy P, what's up, Andy? Says everyone in the GOP who isn't just an outright idiot knows that the debt spending cannot continue. The one who says we need to raise the debt limit just want to try and delay the inevitable market correction. Yeah, they don't want to be blamed for making everyone's bonds worthless. About 1/3 of the national debt is owned by individual U.S. investors. To be honest, at some point, we may just have to say, sorry, but you should have put your money in a better investment vehicle. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. They already did that with U.S. Treasuries. This has already happened, essentially. That's why SVB and a lot of the banks have failed. Because they bought treasuries, and then the treasuries were reduced in value. Andy says the debt we have is unsustainable. Putting off the inevitable may be more dangerous than defaulting now. That's kind of my point. It's like we need to do something now, otherwise it's going to be worse. Andy says, the sad thing is that the base would be more energized if we stopped the spending. That's right. They think defaulting would cause them to lose votes because of the bond market and it would collapse. It's not even secret. RNC research to know that Republicans and even many moderates want the debt problem to end. Yeah, and I think we're actually feeling it, right? That is the problem here. Is the consequences of this are not abstract. We can see them in our lives. Bro John is in the house. What's up, Bro John? Shout out to Bro John in the house. Welcome, bro. That's the first, I think welcome to Bro John in the house. Amazing. Says, are OMG and its employees becoming new slaves? Yeah, they're not allowed to do anything unless Project Veritas says so. Jeremy says, I have to put down the logical fallacy that was mentioned, time being measured in base 60 and money being measured in base 10. Using a base 60 example to understand a base 10 issue just doesn't compute. Well, I don't know. That sounds like advanced mathematics to me. I don't know anything about base anything. But however, I do know that $1 trillion is way bigger than $1 billion based on those numbers. So thanks for the good comment from our friend Jeremy. And I know Project Veritas is starting up very soon. And so we'll send everybody over there in a short minute. And we had another comment from Jeremy. Jeremy says, I can't believe I have to mention this, but I'm not sure what that comment is about. From Jeremy. Okay, but we'll save that for the morning then. We'll save that for the morning stream tomorrow. Our members only morning stream in the morning. But that, my friends, is going to be it for us on the day. And so we are going to leave it right there. Locals will be back on our, oh, that was a Ukraine comment. I couldn't understand what you were talking about. We'll save that one for the morning. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. And so we are going to leave it right there. We covered some good ground. We got some James O'Keefe updates, FBI contempt updates, talking about the debt catastrophe. We appreciate everybody who joined us today. Tomorrow morning, we will be doing our members only morning stream. And we'd love to see you there, where we talk about some of the other stories that we can't get to here today on the show. Check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and we'll see you there. Also, if you join us on YouTube, don't forget to grab the private Telegram chat link, because although the chat ends here, the show must go on and on, my friends, and the chat that never ends. Also, don't forget to get your Field of Greens. Our friends over at fieldofgreens.com have real organic superfood. It tastes delicious. It's amazing going down. It's going to help you feel energized and fortified and nutrified. And we know the food they try to shove down our throats is as bad as this debt deal. So make sure you get your Field of Greens, and the vegetables, let's not forget, they want to be eaten. We appreciate you supporting the sponsors. If you'd like to get a mind map installed in your brain, go to spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap and get access to this mind map. I love this tool. I want to thank the mods and the meme smiths who help keep this show nice and beautiful and orderly. Big shout outs to our big shots. Oh gosh, sorry about that, V. Big shout outs to our friend Vienticus Prime, K Bean, Just Cause, Playing Hooky in the House, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, our friend Beyond Geo Stars, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger. We have Do Not Mind Me, along with Sleepy Dogly, Geegum Geegum, and our friend Nathan NA10 in the house. And so that is it for us on the day, my friends. We are going to leave it right there. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.